there, this is a couples Thai massage recap video for the Receiving Gifts workshop from Thursday, August 16th at the Everett House Healing Center. This is my sister Kristen, she's my demo body today. And like I said, last class was focused on receiving. So that's for the person receiving touch, obviously. Try to always communicate with your partner any barriers or boundaries that you have so you can stay comfortable and so you can stay in a receptive state of mind and state of body. If you push too far past your boundaries, then you're going to have a block up, and for good reason. So be sure to communicate so that you can be comfortable. We're going to start out in a side lying position. Make sure that the bottom leg is straight and the top knee is bent. If this causes the hips to collapse forward, then simply take a pillow and prop it underneath the front knee so it's less of a drop from the knee, or from the hip to the knee rather. Kristen doesn't really need it, but I'll leave it there just in case it's more comfortable. We're going to start out releasing the inner thigh, and there's several ways to do this, one of which is on your back face up, using your forearm and sinking into the inner thigh for what's sometimes called a blood stop in Thai massage. The forearm can be pretty sharp, and with the knee open to the side like that, you're actually in a stretch position for the inner thigh, so it can feel a little vulnerable. When I first learned this technique, which is sitting on the inner thigh, I didn't think I would ever use it, but now for me it's quite comfortable both to give and to receive. So start out kneeling behind your partner's bottom leg. I'm not sure if you can see it here behind the pillow, but there's the bottom leg. And you want to make sure that the knee is level with the hip. Right now it's slightly skewed forward. So I'm going to grab the ankle, lean back, pulling the knee with it. And now more of her inner thigh is exposed. There's a few different ways you can sit on the inner thigh. Make sure to slowly lower your weight. I'm going to squat facing away from my partner, keeping a hand down either fingertips, palm, or loose fist. Make sure it's a strong base for you. Helps you have more control. So for me, I like both of my feet down. Another option is to drape one ankle over your partner's ankle. So try to get close to their groin, as close as possible. I've made contact with the skin. I'm slowly sinking through one layer of tissue. I can feel below my hips some tight muscles. Is that okay, Kristen? Mm-hmm. So I'm slowly letting pressure off of my arm. And the more that your head is back over your hips, the more weight sinks straight down because you got a heavy head. Be mindful if there's a large size discrepancy between you and your partner. So you can just keep more weight on one hand or even two. I'd say lock and sink for 30 seconds to a minute. You might be able to feel your partner's pulse below your hips, below your glutes, below your butt. And then I'm going to press into my arm, my hand, and lift up, let the blood return to her leg when I prevented some of it from flowing very freely. And I'm going to do this about 3 times. You can do it more or less. Communicate with your partner because you want to make sure they feel safe to receive this type of compression. For some of you, on certain days, this might feel better than others. Be very mindful or skip it entirely if your partner has high blood pressure. If you're on medication, it should be under control. You can do this blood stop, just do it a little more lightly and not as long. I'm going to lift my arm up on this last one. The more I relax, the more she can relax. And it's not my sits bones making contact with her inner thigh here. I'm in between my sits bones and my tailbone is a little bit tucked, so it's the softer part of my own tissue making contact with her inner thigh. Okay, so now I'm gonna slowly lift up, remove myself from the situation behind her leg, and then use my palms to feel compressing all the way down to her low leg and foot. So after we've done some compression, some warming for the bottom leg, we're gonna move up to the shoulder. Kneel right next to your partner's back or hip. My hips are pretty level with hers here so that I can take her top hand, grab it by the wrist, lean back as you open the arm to the side. If you have issues kneeling as the giver, then you can wedge a pillow in between your calves and your thighs to support under your knees. Her shoulder is open back and I'm right here in between her torso and her arm. And instead of using my hand to stretch her arm back, to stretch her pec and her chest, I'm gonna bring my hands down and push my hips forward, taking her arm with me. And I'm gonna do that a few times. And now I'm gonna tuck my toes underneath, okay, so my feet are flexed, toes tucked, so I can lean back and I sit up a little bit higher so I can get my shoulder over my forearm, over my point of contact. The shoulder's a ball and socket joint, so I'm not gonna be on the round part right around the deltoid, I'm gonna be just inside of it. And I'm at a diagonal angle here. I'm not gonna use the pointy part of my elbow, I'm gonna use the flat part of the forearm. When I bend it, there's a lot of soft tissue here that kind of cushions it. Other hand supports her shoulder blade behind her. So I'm gonna lock, stack my shoulder over my point of contact, and then sink. 3 to 5 times. Only lock and sink for maybe 7 seconds, something like that. I'm slowly sinking, compressing layers and layers of tissue here. And now I slowly remove pressure, lean back, bring her arm back as I lean my torso. I'm gonna drop down to the tops of my feet again, bend her elbow, thread my arm underneath her wrist, and cup her shoulder with both hands. Now I'm gonna circle my torso around, circling her shoulder around. Okay, so I'm not just using my arms, I'm using my whole body to move. From here, grab onto the wrist, lengthen it forward, switch hands, bring one hand down so that my hand that's closer to her face is the one grabbing the wrist. Now lengthen her arm forward and step my back foot up so that I can drape her wrist over my knee. I'm pushing down on her wrist bones, not on the top of her hand. That doesn't feel so good. Knees pointing this way. I'm lunging at a diagonal angle so I can use my other hand not at her waist, in between her iliac crest of her pelvis and this greater trochanter, this outer hip bone. So I'm compressing here, and then I lean forward and deepen my lunge to lengthen my arms away from one another. Does that feel okay? Mm-hmm. You can do this a few times. And then invite a bend into her arm and place it back in front of her. From here, Kristen, I'm gonna ask you to bend both your knees and then with your arms push yourself up to a seat. I'm gonna have her face the camera. We're gonna continue on doing some work on her shoulders. We worked on her right shoulder, so I'm gonna continue with that one just because we might be able to see a difference after we do this work. So, we did this last week, but we're gonna do it again. stand above your partner. The feet and knees are turned out at about 45 degrees. Knees bend slightly so you touch just the back of the shoulders, but I'm not pushing her forward, okay? So just a light touch here. I lean my chest forward to sink pressure straight down. For the partner that's receiving, make sure your spine is straight so you're not collapsing under the pressure here. If you have a history of injury to your vertebra, the bones of your spine, this downward pressure might not be good for you. So for those receiving, if this doesn't feel okay, especially to your low back, your spine, then skip it. Okay, so after a few compressions, I'm gonna come down to a kneeling position, kind of a lunge. So one knee is out. Actually, I'm gonna switch because again, we're gonna work on the right shoulder. Drape her arm over the knee and make sure that it's not too high. I can lengthen my foot forward if I need to account for any height discrepancies here. So I'm gonna invite her head to the side very gently. It's like you're leading a dance, okay? So there's a little bit of cooperation on your partner's side. Keep the elbow bent, use the same, they call it the proximal fifth, the 1/5 of your forearm that's closest to your torso, not the pointy part of the elbow. Okay, so I'm gonna lock and sink a few times, exploring the tissue here, and I can gently guide some range of motion to her head and neck as I switch into different compression positions. You're looking for the dense part of the tissue, the knots, right? You can compress out toward the deltoid, out toward the outer edge of the shoulder, but not on the bone, okay? None of this is bone on bone. You could spend some time here, but you don't want to overdo it, and we're not working aggressively. Your partner's body can sense that if you're working aggressively. Okay, so I'm going to bring her head back to center, where she is, and now I'm going to invite her chin toward her chest, but just by gently pressing, okay? So not forceful here. The neck can be really sensitive. And interlace my fingers and then use my elbows like a lever to squeeze my heels of hands together up and down the back of her neck, okay? So I'm gonna squeeze, lock in the front of her shoulders, and then lengthen forward. This should feel like a hug, okay? So moving up the neck, now about the middle of her neck, I'm squeezing heels of hands together and then guiding her head forward. Now I'm all the way up to the base of her skull, just underneath it. Squeeze and lengthen forward. Now I move back down the neck, middle of the neck, squeeze, lengthen forward. Base of the neck, squeeze and lengthen. Now you can bring your head back to center. Turn to the right and sit right about here. So we stretch the head to either side. Well, really, we open the inner thigh, we open the chest. Now we stretch the neck to either side, stretch it forward. And now we're gonna open up into a back bend. I've seen this done a lot in Thai massage photos and tutorials and things like that. Reach your arms back behind you. You can have, this is internal rotation of the shoulder or external. So palms can face forward or in. Personally, I like external rotation. Bring the feet up. My toes are just underneath and inside the shoulder blades. See her chest? I'm not trying to push her chest forward of her hips. You want the rib cage to stay pretty stacked over the hips. I'm gonna lean back to pull her arms with me, and she can scoop her chin up without just leaning the head back on the shoulders, but lift the chin up. That's gonna really help stretch the front of the neck, okay? So deep breath in, and exhale, Kristen, scoop your chin up toward the ceiling without just dipping the head back, okay? Deep breath in, and exhale. Deep breath in, and exhale, last time. Okay. Release the arms down. I'm gonna scoop back. So we're gonna come into a reclined, sustained variation of that back bend. So lower yourself down so my feet hit you right about here. Yes, yeah. And now I'm gonna catch her head, palms up. If you have restricted range of motion here, you can bend your knees and scoot your hips forward. And then for the partner receiving, communicate. Sometimes it feels better to have the head dip lower. Sometimes it feels better to have it higher. The goal is for your partner to be able to receive this position without their neck muscles overstraining or overworking. So how does this feel for you right here? A little lower, or a little higher? A little higher, right about there?
Yeah.
Okay. So this is a Goldilocks zone. Sometimes it's different on different days, so communicate. I'm gently cupping with my fingers down here, the base of her skull, and tractioning, pulling her head gently back toward my chest. You can also add some dynamic movement to this very, very safely. I'm holding her head. I'm not gripping it, that's not comfortable, but I'm holding it firmly so she knows that she's safe. Palm the head like a basketball, and then you can gently turn the head to one side. Lift it up for the transition so it's not at maximum depth. Turn it to the other side. So most of the weight's in my left hand here, stretching the right side of her neck and chest. Lift the head up, rotate, see how I'm leaning. Let the weight of the head fall into the right hand now, stretching the left side of her neck and chest. Bring it back to center. To exit this posture, one hand, your stronger head supports, or a stronger hand supports the head. Lift the head, and then other hand, thumb and index finger open, support at the upper back, base of the neck. Invite your partner all the way back up to seated. And that's all we did for last Thursday. So stay tuned for the next 2 sessions of our workshop recap. But thanks for watching. Feel free to message if you have any questions.